There is a particular silence that follows you. You have felt it since you were young, a quiet that sits just beneath the noise of everything else. A sense that something is being asked of you that isn't being asked of anyone around you. You couldn't name it then. You may not be able to name it now, but you have always carried it. A weight that doesn't feel like burden, exactly. More like calling, more like gravity. As if the universe has a directional pull specifically designed around your spine. This is not a spiritual video. It is not here to confirm that feeling, or to dismiss it. What it is an examination, because that sensation, that architecture of perceived destiny, of sacred mission, of being somehow irreplaceable in the unfolding of something larger. It is one of the most psychologically sophisticated constructions the human mind produces. An understanding how it is built, what it serves, what it costs, and what lives beneath it. That is the kind of knowing that changes things permanently. Every chosen one story follows the same structural blueprint. The orphan in the tower, the child born under a sign, the one who was told they were ordinary right up until the moment it became undeniable that they were not. Joseph and his coat, Harry and his scar, Joan and her voices, Neo and his glitching reality, Luke Skywalker staring at twin suns on the horizon of a life too small to hold him. These are not just stories. They are psychological mirrors, and the reason they have persisted across every civilization, every century, every culture that has ever produced mythology is that they are not describing external heroes. They are describing an internal architecture that lives inside every human being. Who has ever felt that they were built for something that hasn't happened yet? Joseph Campbell called it the hero's journey. Carl Jung called it the individuation process. What we are going to call it here is what it actually is. A constructed psychological identity. One that is assembled piece by piece from the specific raw materials of a specific life. And like all constructions, it can be examined, it can be understood. And once understood, it can be used rather than simply inhabited. The architecture begins early, not with triumph, with difference. The first building block of chosen one, identity, is not the sense of being powerful. It is the sense of being other. The child who reads the room differently than everyone else in it, who feels things at a frequency that doesn't match the people around them, who looks at their family, their classroom, their neighborhood, and knows with a quiet certainty that they have no language for yet, that something is misaligned, that they have been placed somewhere they do not entirely belong. This is not pathology, it is perception, and in many cases it is accurate. There are children who process experience at a depth that the adults around them are not equipped to meet, whose sensitivity registers information that others filter out, whose interior world is genuinely more complex, more layered, more turbulent, and more alive than what is reflected back at them from the outside. But here is where the architecture begins its construction. The mind of a child and later the mind of an adult does not sit comfortably with an explicable difference. It needs a story, and the story it reaches for is always the same one. Not that something is wrong, but that something is chosen. The wound becomes the mark. The isolation becomes the sign. The feeling of not belonging becomes evidence of being placed deliberately in the wrong environment, held incognito, waiting. The second layer of the architecture is the mirror effect. Once the foundation of differentness is in place, the psyche begins to seek confirmation. and it finds it with extraordinary consistency in story, in film, in mythology, in literature, in lyrics, in the accounts of historical figures who suffered before they were recognized. The young person who feels marked reads about Joan of Arc and feels a recognition that is almost cellular. The adult who feels their potential is invisible watches a film about a misunderstood visionary and experiences it not as entertainment but as documentation. This is more than identification. This is the activation of a template. And the template works because it is designed to. Mythology, at its deepest function, operates as a distributed psychological technology. It takes universal interior experiences, isolation, wound, latent potential, the hunger for meaning, and it gives them shape. It tells the psyche, this feeling has a name, this feeling has a story. The recognition is real, the feeling is real. The danger is in what the architecture does with it, because the mirror effect, once activated, begins to operate selectively. You see every piece of evidence that confirms the template, and you develop a sophisticated, largely unconscious mechanism for filtering out the evidence that would complicate it. The third, structural layer is what the architecture does with pain. If you are inside a chosen one construction, your suffering will never read to you as random. It will read as preparation. Every loss will feel like it is building something. Every betrayal will feel like it is clarifying something. Every period of apparent failure or stagnation will feel just beneath the surface of despair, like accumulation, like the pressure required to form something that ordinary experience cannot produce. There is genuine psychological truth embedded in this orientation. The research on post-traumatic growth is real. Adversity, processed with meaning-making capacity, does produce resilience, depth, and capability that comfort alone cannot generate. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and wrote about meaning as the fundamental human drive. The wound, held consciously, does become resolved. It says, this experience was designed specifically for you, by something that knew what you were going to need, and that shift from meaning to orchestration is where the construction begins to operate as identity rather than insight. Because if your suffering is designed, then you are necessary. And if you are necessary, then whatever you are called to do is not optional, not ambition, not desire, obligation, destiny. The fourth layer is isolation. Every chosen one's story requires a period of profound aloneness. The desert, the exile, the years of obscurity before the revelation. This is not incidental to the architecture. It is load-bearing, because the function of isolation in the chosen one psychology is twofold. First, it creates the container. When you are separated from the noise of the herd, from the constant low-level static of other people's needs and narratives and small ambitions, you come into contact with something interior, something quieter, something that feels in the silence like signal. Second, isolation functions as proof. The logic operates like this. If I were ordinary, I would belong here. I would fit. The fact that I am alone, not just physically, but in the specific kind of aloneness, that means no one quite sees what I see, bitters evidence of my incompatibility with an environment that has not yet caught up to what I am. This is one of the architecture's most elegant mechanisms, and the mission becomes the justification for the aloneness. The loop is closed. It sustains itself. The fifth structural element is the antagonist's function. If you're building a chosen one identity, you need opposition. Opposition performs a specific psychological service. It externalizes the architecture's validity. Every person operating inside a chosen one construction has an antagonist. Sometimes it is a specific person, a parent who dismissed them, a system that failed them, an institution that rejected them. Sometimes it is more diffuse, a culture that doesn't value what they value. Big an industry that gatekeeps what they were born to do. The antagonist does not simply make the story more dramatic, it confirms the stakes, because opposition in this architecture reads as evidence of threat. The logic, again, is elegant and self-healing. The more you are opposed, the more confirmed the mission becomes. The sixth layer is what we might call the delay mechanism, because the delay serves a critical function. It sustains the tension that keeps the entire construction energized. If you were immediately recognized, immediately placed in the role your destiny demands, the construction would complete, and completed constructions have a peculiar problem. The delay preserves orientation. The horizon is where the architecture stays alive. This is why you will notice, if you are honest with yourself, that the specific form of your mission has a habit of adjusting. What felt like arrival turns out to have been preparation for a larger thing. And you recalibrate, and you continue, and the horizon continues to hold its position just ahead of you. This is not failure. A mission completed is a mission that must be replaced. So the architecture, in its wisdom, rarely allows full completion. It keeps the door open just enough. This is what holds all other elements in place. The chosen one identity is not simply a belief that you are called to do something important, that the specific combination of your wound, your perception, your isolation, your delayed recognition, your antagonists, your capacity for suffering, your depth of feeling, constitutes a unique instrument, one that cannot be replicated. This belief is psychologically intoxicating in a way that almost nothing else is, because it resolves, in one elegant stroke, the most fundamental anxiety of human existence, the anxiety of expendability, of being one of many. Not only are you not expendable, you are necessary. Not only is your life not random, it is required. The universe is not indifferent to your existence. Every success is confirmation. Every connection is either aligned with a mission or it isn't. Because everything described above, the differentness, the wound as preparate, the isolation, the antagonist, the delay, the irreplaceability, all of it is on one level. To insulate the interior from the most devastating possibility, the psyche knows that you are not special, that the feeling of being built for something is not prophecy, it is hunger. Human, ordinary, universal hunger for significance, for purpose, for a life that adds up to something that cannot be taken away by death or forgetting. The chosen one architecture is built on top of that hunger. And it is not built by weak minds. It is built by people who are, in very real ways, different, not cosmically, but genuinely. People who process experience at depth, who carry things others put down, who sense things in rooms and relationships that the architecture of ordinary social life has no category for. The architecture begins to fail at the seams when the story it requires cannot absorb the reality it encounters. When the recognition never arrives and the delay stretches past the point that the mechanism can reframe as preparation, but simply indifference. The universe's complete an unmoved indifference to the inner conviction of your importance. To wonder whether the horizon was ever real, or whether you have been building your life around the pursuit of a destination that was always a projection. This is not the end of the architecture. This is its most important moment. Because what happens in that silence, in the gap between the story and the reality, is not collapse. It is revelation. Not the revelation the construction promised. A different one. Smaller in some ways. Incomparably larger in others. With existence. With other people. With a specific, irreducible texture of your own interior life. Stripped of its mythological framing. The mission does not need to be irreplaceable to be worth doing. And you, specifically you, not the chosen version, not the marked version, not the version the architecture assembled to protect you from the possibility of ordinariness. You are already sufficient for what is actually being asked of you, because you are here, and you are paying attention, and that is rarer than the architecture ever told you. What do you do with this? Not dismantle it, not pathologize it, not trade the story of the chosen one for the equally reductive story of the self-deceived. You use it the way a good architect uses a scaffold. You recognize what it built. You acknowledge what it was protecting. You do not pretend you were never inside it. And then you begin to ask a question the construction was never designed to tolerate. Not, what am I destined for? But, what am I actually doing? With these specific people, on this specific day. And the somewhere it was pointing beneath the mythology, beneath the delay mechanisms, and the antagonist logic and the Next in workflow, storyboard plus dark surrealism image prompts, notebook, LM host instructions, metadata package.